All right, Blake, it's time to talk Coach of the Year. The Mid-Season Coach of the Year watch list by Naismith was released today. There's a lot of really good names on this list, and there's some other ones that I'm not too sure about. We just talked about it here in the lobby. We'll let the viewers know what we think here. But first, let's read the list off, obviously. So the 15 names on the Coach of the Year watch list as of today, Friday, February 21st. We got Greg Gard at Wisconsin. Dennis Gates, Missouri. Todd Golden, Florida. Penny Hardaway, Memphis. Tom Izzo, Michigan State. Pat Kelsey, Louisville. Dusty May, Michigan. Grant McCaslin, Texas Tech. Ben McCollum, Drake University. Matt Painter, Purdue. Bruce Pearl, Auburn. Rick Pitino, St. John's. Richard Pitino, New Mexico. Kelvin Sampson, Houston. And John Shire at Duke, and that caps out the top 15. Now, Blake, there's some names on this list that I think might be a little bit out of place. I'll let you take the floor on this one first. A couple of names that I think got left off as well that I'd be interested to see if we share the same thoughts about. But when you see that list of 15, what sticks out to you?
Uh, I think there's got to be a big old red flag, a warning flag over Penny Hardaway being on that list. He's like a polar bear in Texas, honestly. Uh, they're having a really good season. They're sitting, I think, 21-5 this year. But they've had some pretty bad losses, as well as like every other team in the country. I feel like has had semi-bad losses besides like Auburn. They're kicking ass. Duke really hasn't lost games against weak comp, I feel like. But Memphis, they've lost on the road at Temple, which Temple's not a good team this year. They just lost recently to Wichita State on the road by 5, and this is a team that hadn't won a ranked game since like 2021, I think it was. So, that's embarrassing. They got beat up by Mississippi State. That's not really a bad loss, but if you're considered a top 25 team and a team kind of fighting for like a March Madness run, then it's not a good loss at all. And then early in the season as well, they got beat up by Arkansas State. Arkansas State, they're a good team for a mid-major. Their head coach is one of Alabama's former top like recruiting guys. He was an assistant there at Alabama. But this is still a team that is considerably weak compared to like a team like Memphis. So I don't know. Penny's kind of been really up and down. I feel like at Memphis as well. Hasn't really lived up to a ton of the hype. He's an incredible player, in the NBA, but his coaching just hasn't seemed up to par. He's kind of trying to turn around that narrative this year. They're having a really good season besides those losses I threw out at you. But I don't feel like he was deserving of being in this top 15 list. Another guy I thought was really like not supposed to be there is Matt Painter. This is a Purdue team that was just ranked like I think 7th in the country. So like they're not a bad team at all, but I just don't think they don't really scream out insanely good. They don't like Matt Painter this year doesn't really scream top 15 coach this season at least. This Purdue team is kind of weak. If you take away Braden Smith, TKR for like one game, then you can see the trend that's going on right now and the Big Ten like madness that's going on. They just lost to Michigan on the road. They lost to Wisconsin at Mackey Arena. Then they got beat up by Michigan State. So they're not really trending in the right direction. I just don't think Matt Painter is deserving of this top 15 watch list for Naismith Coach of the Year. I think there's some coaches that got left off, like you were kind of hinting towards. I think Mark Pope is a big one. This is a guy that literally had to turn over that entire team. Calipari took all his luggage over to Arkansas. They didn't have a single guy that had like any returning minutes. They had Grant Darbyshire, a walk-on, was the only guy I think that returned to that Kentucky team. So Pope's done a great job. They have had some pretty bad losses at Texas. Granted, they were out without their 3 point guards, but I mean, that's still a game that you probably should win. They lost on the road to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, once again, not a bad team, but I mean, that's a game you probably should have won. Ole Miss, I wouldn't say that's a bad loss, but I mean, they played about as bad as, like, I think we've seen that team in a hot minute play. Who else have they lost to? I feel like there was
Georgia.
Georgia. Oh yeah, that was a really piss poor game. Yeah, that's a game you probably want to forget if you're a Wildcats fan. Ohio State, that game bad on both. Like, I feel like that game just sucked overall. Clemson, I mean, dear God, like, that game was played about as bad as you could have played for Kentucky. But I mean, overall, I still think this Kentucky team and Mark Pope have done a tremendous job this year, considering all the, like, outside factors that have gone into this, like Lamont being out for some time off and on, Carr dealing with injuries all year. Jackson Robinson right now has been out for a few games. And then you add in Kirk Creesa, who was like a energy guy for Kentucky. He was hitting some shots against Gonzaga and some of those early games, and then you take him away in that leadership. And I mean, it's tough to do, and Pope's done a great job, I feel like. And then you kind of said it, like, before we got in the recording, Chris Beard done a heck of a job. I think he's a guy that IU should look at next year to hire. He's taken that team from the portal and gotten some pieces back from last year, and he's completely turned around that program. I feel like they're sitting at 6th in the SEC, 19-7 on the year. They've had some really big wins against Kentucky. They also beat Alabama. They're really good this year. On the road at Alabama too, and that's a game they really controlled most of the time. They also beat Louisville when Louisville was on fire early in the season. So they've had some good wins. They have also lost some games they probably should have won, but I mean, like we said, and that's really been the scenario kind of for every college team all year and basically every year. So yeah, those are like two coaches I really think should have probably been in the talks. And then also, I don't know if he should have been in the top 15, but this is another guy that probably should have been in, is Clemson's head coach. He's really done a great job with that program. George Mason's head coach probably should have made it. Clemson's is Brad Brownell.
Brownell, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think those guys probably should have made it, or at least hadn't been in like some discussions with it.
Yeah, when I look at that group, I mean, I'm on board with you on Penny. I don't really think that he belongs in that group. I mean, he's had really quality wins, like he beat Michigan State, and they had some decent early non-conference wins, like the one against Missouri as well. But that was super early in the season too, before those teams even found their footing. And I mean, you can't ignore the loss to a squad like Arkansas State, and
Yeah.
like where we sit right now. Memphis, they're probably looking at like a 6 or a 7 seed in the tournament, maybe a 5. So, like, he's done a good job with what he has. I just don't think it's National Coach of the Year material. And then,
no,
yeah, like just scrolling through the list again, Ben McCollum. I mean, I guess you could make the argument. There's Drake's 24-3 on the year, and they did have to replace DeVries.
I do think that's deserving because, I mean, he just came from a D2 school. I mean, they had a ton of success there. They've won national championships like the past few years, I think it's been. But to take a roster full of D2 guys, bring them up a level, and compete and win games, a lot of games at the D1 level, and a decent conference. I mean, the Ohio Valley Conference isn't like anything crazy, but there's still some good comp in there year in and year out. So he's done a really good job, I feel like.
Yeah, he's done a good job. I'm not sure if maybe he deserved it over like a Mark Pope or somebody, but
Yeah,
I don't think it's egregious that he's on this list. I'm not trying to dunk on him or anything. Matt Painter, that absolutely not. I mean, the
yeah,
only thought process I can see here for them putting him on this list is they just expected Purdue to fall off a cliff without Zach Edey, and they're just impressed by what he's done. But at the
I
same
still think.
time, yeah,
Wait, here you can keep talking.
at the
My
same
bad.
time, oh, you're good. This team's riding a 3-game losing streak right now, and they're firmly out of first place in the Big Ten right now. So they're not doing anything spectacular. And then you look at Richard Pitino as well. Like New
Yeah,
Mexico,
that's another weird coach in there.
yeah, like New Mexico's a great mid-major. Don't get me wrong; they definitely could make the tournament if they win their conference tournament. Maybe even sneak an at-large bid if things go the right way. But they made the tournament last year, so like he hasn't done anything monumental there in that spot. That I just I don't know. I mean, some of these names are kind of head scratching. Mark Pope, I get it. He's had his losses that have been pretty bad, like you mentioned, but injury problems have been plaguing that team since December when Kirk Reese broke his foot. And I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think when you think about the grand scheme of this isn't even me being a Kentucky homer. This guy took a roster that was bare bones, built it from the portal in a span of 2 to 3 months, and has pumped out wins against Duke, Florida, who looks like a national title contender, competed with Alabama. They're going to get another shot at them this weekend. Swept Tennessee. That's a top 6 team in America right now. Beat Gonzaga in what was pretty much a road environment. Gonzaga hasn't been the greatest, but I mean, it's still hard to win going out in that side of the country. They usually play pretty well out there. I mean, getting wins against Mississippi State on the road in a hostile environment. Louisville, they got that win. Louisville hadn't really hit their stride yet, but there's really just I think that the quality of wins for Pope kind of outweighs the bad losses, in my opinion, just because you got to think about the hand that he was dealt when he walked into that situation. So I think Pope could easily sub out for one of those guys we mentioned. Chris Beard, you said it earlier. I think he deserves it as well because he has been one of the better coaches in the SEC. He's got Ole Miss creeping towards the top 5 of that conference, which I don't think anybody expected really going into this season. And beyond that, I mean, Chris Beard, that's an obvious one, I think. Pope, you can make a conversation for him as well. If Iowa State didn't go on that little skid that they went on, I think TJ Otzelberger would be on this list, but they slipped up and had their own issues, so
yeah.
that kind of cost them there. What do you think? This was a name we didn't really hit on. What do you think about Greg Gard being on there? I've seen mixed opinions online about him being on this list.
Personally, I think it's a really good thing. Wisconsin, they're insanely good this year. He ended up going out getting John Tonji, who I don't know if anybody really expected him to be this good. And he's like gave him the keys basically. He's let John Blackwell basically go to work this season, and they're sitting top 3 right now in a pretty top heavy Big Ten conference, and they're I think 1.5 games back right now in the Big Ten behind Michigan and Michigan State. So I do think it's good that he made it. They've had some big wins like the on the road at Purdue, like Mackey Arena. That's literally one of the best environments in probably the sport of basketball. So to get a win there and in the month of February when we're almost in March, it's kind of crazy. They also, who else have they beat? They haven't really beat anybody else. Insanely crazy. I mean, IU, it's an okay win. Ohio State. So their resume isn't great, but I mean, they have played some okay teams, I guess, in the Big Ten conference.
They're
That's consistent.
they're taking care of their business. I mean,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that bracket preview, they've got them. I think it was a 3 seed maybe right
Three
now.
seed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where Wisconsin sits. You know, another guy that I think could have had maybe a case to be on this list, Kevin Willard at Maryland. He's done a great
Oh
job with
yeah.
them.
He's
I
kind
think
of
Yeah, I think he's flown under the radar. You could have made a case for him being on here, in my opinion. And then looking at the rest of it, Buzz Williams too with Texas A&M. I think that he deserved a shot at this list because A&M they're number 7 in the country right now. They've only lost 5 games, and a couple of those came without Wade Taylor too. So this is a team that could be even better than really what their record shows right now. So if I had to make my own personal changes to this list, I think that I take Penny Hardaway out, throw in Mark Pope, get rid of Richard Pitino. I think you sub him out, you put in Chris Beard, and then looking at the rest, Painter. I think maybe you take him out for, like I said, a Buzz Williams or a Kevin Willard. So there's a lot of room for debate on here. We could talk all day about this. Grant McCaslin, he deserves it. We didn't talk about him. We got to show him some love too. He's done a great job with Texas Tech. Dusty May going into Michigan in year 1 and having the success that he's having. He's going to be playing for first place in the Big Ten tonight against Michigan State in that game. So that's going to be interesting. But looking at the list as a whole, Blake, we've talked about who we think maybe shouldn't be here and who we'd replace. But we've got the list in front of us. One of these coaches is going to ultimately take home the award at the end of the year. Now, there's a lot of ball left to be played. But if we just called our shot right now, who we think takes home the award when it's all said and done out of this group, who's your pick and why?
I don't know if I can pick one guy. I'm going to have to go with 2 different ones I think could win it. I think it's down to Dennis Gates and Bruce Pearl, both SEC guys. Dennis Gates, he's completely revolutionized that Missouri program, who I feel like they've been known as a football program in recent history. Last year in basketball, they were 0-18 in conference play, and now this year they've got I think it's 3 top 5 wins. So this is an unbelievably good Missouri team, and they're starting to hit their strides. They've picked up wins over Kansas. They just beat Alabama when Alabama scored in over 90 points. They've got a couple other ones I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but it's an unbelievable season so far for Missouri. And then on the flip side, Bruce Pearl, I mean, that should be a dead giveaway. He's, I don't know, probably the best coach in all of college basketball right now. The guy's a genius, to put it point blank. They're number 1 in the country for a reason. I mean, I think they are going to win the national championship, but just how dominant they've been. They've had some slip-ups kind of here down the stretch. The Florida game, they didn't play very well and still only lost by 9. And that was at Neville Arena too, so that was a tough loss.
Yeah, that was. I guess if we don't want to pick a winner, I'll phrase my question like this then, since it's a little bit too early to tell. Give your top 3 in order right now, the power rankings for the coach of the year, because I think I have mine if you want me to go first.
I'll go first. Bruce Pearl 1, Dennis Gates 2, and then I don't know who to go with third. I kind of want to say John Shire third, to be honest with you, just because of how good that Duke team is. I didn't really expect them to be this coordinated as a team. Going into this year, I mean, I kind of thought John Shire was more so a leader of an insanely good program instead of a coach, actually X's and O's and stuff. I thought he was just a guy filling the void there since Coach K left, and he was the next man up. But, I mean, John Shire is a legit coach. They took down Auburn at Cameron Indoor when Auburn was looking like they were probably going to go undefeated early in the season with how dominant they were looking against Comp. So, yeah, I think Shire definitely could be top 3 in those talks right now.
I'll go for mine. I'm going number 1, Dennis Gates. I mean, the job that he's done, 0-18 in the conference last year to where they are right now. They just beat a top 5 team in Alabama. They've got plenty of resume wins to hang their hat on. I just think that it's incredible what he's done. Now, obviously, they got to finish strong down the gates. This is just all subject to change. But if he keeps going at the pace he is, I think that he's my favorite personally. Second, I think I'll go with Bruce Pearl, following your kind of vision there. Bruce, you had him as 1, obviously. I think I'm going to put him down a notch, though. He's done a great job. Auburn, they had reasonable expectations coming into the preseason. I don't think anybody thought they'd be this good, and they really have came out and just blown away expectations in that regard. So I think that
Yeah.
he's definitely top 3. And then third, for me, I think it's got to be in that third spot, either one of Todd Golden or Pat Kelsey, because Todd Golden, he's done a phenomenal job with Florida, and he's just one of the best young minds in the game. Pat Kelsey, on the other hand, he took a Louisville program that was in the complete dumpster fire and just revived them completely. We did a whole video talking about the revival of Louisville. We could go on all day about that. And then I would say, if I have to pick one, I'll go with Kelsey, because Golden, he had some time to establish himself, whereas Kelsey, he threw all this together in year one and has completely turned things around. And then for an honorable mention, I'll go with Tom Izzo, because coming out of the Champions Classic, I mean, Blake, I don't know if you remember it, when we were on here.
They look bad.
We were
thought they weren't
Michigan State. We thought they'd be garbage, and here they are. Like Dusty Man, Michigan. Yeah, they're playing for number 1 against Michigan in the Big Ten tonight. So they've completely turned things around. I heard your top 3. So who's your honorable mention? We'll throw that one in there too.
I think it's got to be Ricky P, to be honest with you. Let's be honest, he's probably a top 5 college basketball coach, maybe all time. He's legit. I mean, this guy's only won wherever he goes. And I mean, I think I threw the statistic out last time we talked about St. John's, but every time Rick Pitino coaches somewhere, he kind of struggles the first year with them, then goes on and just dominates the second season with them. He did it at Kentucky, he did it at Louisville, he's doing it at St. John's, and there's one other place I believe he did it at. I don't know if you know off the top of your head.
Iona,
yep. That was a recent one too. I don't know how I didn't know that, but yeah. he's just unbelievable. I mean, they're sitting at number 1 in the Big East, where Marquette, they've looked really dominant all year, and St. John's kind of had they had their number last time they played. So this is a really good St. John's team. I don't think Final Four talks are out of the books. I think it should be talked about a lot more than it really has. This St. John's team, Rick Pitino, what they put together, that roster construction is beautiful. When you got 4 guys that are or when you're 4th best or top leading scorer, I can't talk right now, but when you're 4th best or highest scorer is Devon Smith, then you know your team's legit, because Devon Smith has been a consistent college player his whole career. So he was a highly touted transfer too for that team. Yeah. So it's just a really deep team with R.J. Lewis, Zuby Ejiofor, Kadari Richmond. He's one of my favorite players in college basketball right now. Simeon Wilcher is another guy that's been really good all year, or consistent for them. So, yeah, I do think Ricky P is my honorable mention right now. Or you could slide him in 3rd, maybe take Shire down to honorable mention. You can really interplace those however you want, really.
Yeah, my only problem with giving Shire a ton of love is just because he's got Cooper Flagg, who's let's be honest here, he's generational. And he's got studs all over that team. So I think he's doing what was expected to be. Well, maybe not expected. I'd say he's overperforming slightly, but I'm not surprised by it at all. If Brandy was here, she may pick Rick Pitino as her coach of the year. We heard her say that she thought he was the best coach in the country. Yeah. But that's a pretty solid list. I think we both got some decent lists there. Top 3 for the I don't belong on this list. Number 1, Penny Hardaway, Matt Painter, and then I'll say Richard. Yeah. I think that's fair. And no disrespect to those guys. I just think that they're kind of the polar bears in Arlington, Texas when it comes to this list and who could possibly have replaced them. But we'll see what happens here down the stretch. We got a couple weeks left in the regular season. Conference tournament play is going to be getting started, and eventually
bless up college basketball. Bless up. We're so ready.
March 2nd, that's the first conference tournament game, tips off the A-Sun Conference. We will be there. ESPN Plus.
We're going to be seated. Let's
Yeah,
go, dude.
but as far as coach of the year goes, yeah, this is what we got. Top 15 going down the stretch. We'll see who comes out on top. I have a feeling that it's going to be a coach from the SEC. I don't know who it'll be. Bruce Pearl, Todd Golden, Dennis Gates. I think you could go right either way, but it's
Hmm.
going to be interesting to see how that finishes out.